Children humiliated their cleaning lady mother without knowing who she really was. Imagine spending your entire life counting pennies to buy bread, believing your family is just struggling to survive, while your mother hides a multi-million-dollar secret under her mattress. This woman deliberately chose to live in poverty to test her children's character. But when the truth finally came out, their reaction was something no one could have predicted. The leak in the kitchen was the metronome of their lives. Drop, pause, drop. Each drop that fell into the aluminum bucket marked the slow passing of another day of scarcity. For Marcos, it was the irritating sound of failure. For Julia, a reminder to be grateful for the roof over their heads, despite everything. And for Elena, their mother, it was the sound of a painful but necessary test, nearing its inevitable end. The house at the end of the dead-end street was a museum of hardship. Peeling walls displayed damp patches, like maps of unknown territories, and the smell of mold mingled with the aroma of weak coffee, Elena's only morning indulgence. She was a frail figure, whose hands, rough and marked by what her children believed to be years of cleaning work, moved with a weary slowness. Her two children, now young adults, orbited this reality in drastically opposite ways. Julia, the youngest, found beauty in small things. She cultivated a small herb garden in old tins on the kitchen windowsill, and her laughter was the only bright color in that gray house. She worked part-time at a coffee shop and handed over her entire salary to her mother without hesitation, always with a smile that said, "We're in this together." Marcos, on the other hand, lived in a state of contained fury. At 25, he saw the family's poverty not as a circumstance, but as a personal prison built by his mother's inertia. He spent hours in his room, scrolling through social media that showcased the wealth and success of others, fueling a resentment that soured his spirit. "Don't you understand, Julia?" he would say, his voice heavy with contempt. "We're sinking. Mom has given up on life and is dragging us down with her." What they didn't know was that late at night, when the house was silent and the sound of dripping water was the only company, Eleanor sat before an old, worn laptop. The screen, however, didn't show solitaire games or cheap recipes. It displayed complex graphs, profit reports from an international luxury hotel chain, and emails from a board of directors who knew her only as the reclusive and brilliant CEO. She was the sole heiress to an empire built by her father, a fortune she had hidden from the world, and more importantly, from her own children. She did this after witnessing wealth transform her late husband, a good man, into an arrogant and empty ghost, corrupted by the power that money conferred. Elena vowed to herself that her children would learn the true measure of a human being, character, not a bank account. And so, for more than 2 decades, she staged a life of hardship, a painful theater where every patched garment and every denied meal was a line in her most important play. The tension, which had simmered beneath the surface for years, exploded on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. Marcos burst into the room, his face flushed with desperate excitement. He waved his phone, showing a cryptocurrency investment scheme that a friend had assured him was the opportunity of a lifetime. He needed initial capital, an amount that, for them, was astronomical. "It's our chance, Mom. We can get out of this hole forever," he pleaded. His solution was simple and brutal: sell the house. "It's all we have, Marcos," Elena replied, her voice calm but firm as steel. The pain in her chest was sharper than the chronic illness she hid from them. She looked at the walls that held her children's first words, their laughter, their cries. "This house isn't made of bricks. It's made of us." The refusal was the spark that ignited Marcos's fuse. His frustration turned to pure hatred. "Memories don't pay the bills," he shouted, the words echoing through the small room. "You're selfish. You'd rather see us rot here than give up your pride. I'm tired of being poor because of you." That afternoon, Marcos packed his bags. Julia cried, begged him to stay, but his eyes no longer saw his sister or his mother. They only saw the ghosts of a life he felt had been stolen from him. He left without looking back, cutting all ties, leaving a silence deeper than any poverty. In the months that followed, the weight of Marcos's absence accelerated Eleanor's decline. The illness, once manageable, became aggressive. Julia, now alone, redoubled her efforts. She took on extra shifts, learned to manage her mother's expensive medications, sold the few valuable belongings they had. She never complained. She cared for her mother with a tenderness and dedication that were living proof that Elena's test, at least for one of her children, had been a success. In her final days, Elena held Julia's hand and whispered, "You have a good heart, my daughter. That's the only inheritance that matters." Julia, without understanding the depth of those words, simply wept, feeling the warmth of her mother's hand fading away. A week after the simple funeral, a letter with a sophisticated stamp arrived. It was from a law firm in the city's financial heart, summoning Marcos and Julia to the reading of Elena's will. The confusion was palpable. Marcos, who appeared reluctantly, scoffed, "A will? What will she leave us? Debts and a bucket for the leak." Julia remained silent, the grief still heavy in her heart. The office was a world apart. Polished marble, leather chairs, and the expensive silence of power. A man in an impeccable suit, who introduced himself as Dr. Alencar, led them to a meeting room overlooking the entire city. It was he who, with solemn formality, began to unravel the secret of a lifetime. He spoke of the Aurum Hotel Corporation, of an asset portfolio worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and of its true president, Elena. Marcos's jaw dropped. Julia looked from Alencar to her brother, her mind spinning, unable to process. But the greatest revelation was yet to come. A screen descended from the wall, and Elena's face filled it. She looked younger, as if recorded years before, but her eyes held the wisdom of a lifetime of sacrifice. "My dear children," she began, her voice choked, "if you are seeing this, it means my test is over. I gave you a life of lack, not out of cruelty, but out of terrified love. I saw what wealth did to your father and swore to protect you from that disease. I wanted to give you a foundation of character before handing you an empire." She looked directly at the camera, as if she could see into their souls. "Money doesn't reveal who you are, it only amplifies. And in recent years, I have seen the true nature of each of you." The will was clear. For Marcos, a small monthly allowance, enough to live simply, but conditional on 100 hours of monthly volunteer work at a homeless shelter. "So that you may learn," Elena's voice said in the video, "that a man's worth lies in what he gives, not in what he has." For Julia, who cared for her mother believing there was nothing to gain, Elena left everything. Total control of the empire, with a single instruction. "Lead with the kindness you showed when we had nothing. Build something greater than profit." The screen went black. Julia wept silently, not for the fortune, but for the immensity of her mother's love and sacrifice. Marcos was paralyzed, his face a mask of shock and regret. In that instant, he understood. His greed hadn't cost him an inheritance. It had cost him his mother's trust and, with it, the true wealth he never knew he possessed. A year had passed. Julia's world had changed, but she hadn't. She chaired Aurum's board meetings with the same humility with which she served coffee. Her first major initiative was the Elena Foundation, an ambitious project to build decent housing for low-income families. In her presentation to investors, she didn't show profit projection charts, but rather a photo of the old house with the bucket under the leaky roof. "No one," she said, her voice firm, "should have the sound of a leaky roof as the soundtrack of their life." Far away, Marcos worked his hours in a community cafeteria. The first few months were a hell of wounded pride. But little by little, as he served hot meals to people who had nothing, something began to change within him. He heard their stories, saw their resilience, and, for the first time, felt a connection that wasn't based on status or money. One night, while cleaning the floor, he saw his reflection in the wet floor and didn't recognize the bitter man he once was. There stood someone poorer in possessions than he had ever been, but infinitely richer in spirit. He finally began to understand his mother's final lesson. The unseen inheritance wasn't about money. It was about the choice between building a castle for oneself or a bridge for others. Julia was building bridges. And Marcos, for the first time, was learning to lay the first stone. And you, what would you do if you found out today that your family hid a fortune from you your whole life? Do you think Elena's attitude was right or cruel? Leave your opinion here in the comments. If this story moved you, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell. In the next video, we'll tell the story of a man who adopted a street girl without knowing that she held the key to solving a crime from 20 years ago. You won't want to miss it.